All right, so everyone's trickling in. So let's get started today. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the UCLA Anderson MBA info session, How to Finance Your MBA. This is actually the first time we are doing an event on this topic. And I'll tell you, the response of people signing up really shows that this is a topic that's very, very important, very top of mind for prospects, applicants, admits. So we're so glad to be here today to hopefully share some resources with you that are new, things that you haven't considered, and things that will help you as you think about taking on a commitment or pursuing a commitment that is a big investment in yourself. Hopefully you'll hear some things today that make this maybe not so daunting and intimidating. I do want to start by just introducing you to the EMBA Admissions team. We're 5 strong. We love what we do and we love meeting our prospects and applicants. So please, you will get a note after this event where links to our drop-in Q&A sessions, also to our one-on-ones. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to support you. We're here to answer your questions. We are heading into our final round of application deadline, which is May 1st is when the final deadline. I know that's just a few weeks away, but for some of you that might be a little earlier in the process, we will be kind of shutting down for a little bit in May. We're doing a lot of interviews, but the Q&A drop-in sessions will still be there, and we're still here to meet with you. So feel free to email or get in touch. And if you're deciding you want to get your application in even last minute, there's time. We can help you work through it. So definitely get in touch with us in this next week or so if that's where your priority lies. So today's session is meaty. As I said, this is a big topic, and there's a lot of things that we want to cover, a lot of resources that we want to put on your radar. You're going to get to meet people from our financial aid office, our career services office, and most importantly, I think you're going to get to hear from people who were sitting in your same position just a few years ago. So getting to hear from a current student, Abhinav, as well as Eileen Korte, who's a graduate of the program, and getting to hear how they thought about making this investment and this commitment. So you will get to hear their stories as well. So while today's event is very focused on the financial side, the financial commitment, as well as the financial upside of a degree like this, it is transformative. We hear stories day in and day out about the increased compensation that people are able to make when joining this program. But I think it's really important to ground yourself in understanding that this is a transformational life experience as well. Going to get your MBA is going to enhance your skill set and just who you show up as a person. It's going to help you work on those soft skills, the leadership skills, whether that's leadership in your job, leadership in your home, or maybe in some philanthropic things that you're involved with or on board of directors, or if that's something you aim to want to be part of. It will help fill in some of those skill gaps that you have, some skills that are really going to help you move into maybe a certain job or make a career transition that's important to you. So absolutely the hard skills are there. And finally, I think the last two about really expanding your network. You know, I hear constantly from students, you just didn't know who you didn't know. And coming to this program is going to give you lifelong friendships, lifelong people that you can call to help advance your career and reach your goals. And you are going to leave this program with confidence. And that's kind of something I think that's pretty priceless and hard to put a price tag on. And confidence is absolutely something that I hear from many of our students and alumni that they left with as a result of this program. So let's get into the nuts and bolts, the program cost. The program is set up as a flat fee program. So the fees means that it's 22 months, and it's not like how you may have remembered in undergrad or maybe even other graduate programs where you pay on a per credit unit basis. This is a flat fee program that includes a lot more than just your tuition. It includes things like listed here, books, There's meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner catered when you come to campus. Housing, so there is a 1-week opening residential where we house you on campus, as well as a 1-week international business residential where we provide your food and housing. Also, you can take unlimited electives covered with the cost, as well as getting access to one-on-one career coaching and executive coaching throughout your 22 months in the program. The other additional fees are pretty minimal, and that's how we designed it to be. So there are things like taking care of your flight for your international residential, or depending on how often you come to school, you only have to pay for the parking. Let's say you choose the monthly section, you only have to pay for parking when you come. And so there are maybe here and there a couple additional expenses, but the majority and the bulk of the expenses will be covered by the flat fee structure. So fellowships. Most EMBA fellowships, unfortunately, don't get a lot of funding. So I wish that this is something that's different. Actually, Eileen Korte is probably listening now, who's in EMBA 2019, and we didn't even have fellowships when she joined the program, but we have in the recent years been able to start giving a small number of fellowships. So the way it works is when you apply to the program, everyone is considered automatically for a fellowship. The amount is $15,000 that will be applied towards your first year in the program. It is a holistic review that we're doing, that we're looking at to determine who receives these. About 10% of our students will receive a fellowship. And one big thing that we focus on when deciding who gets a fellowship is people that come from functional areas or industries that are not typically represented in business schools. And that's because Anderson, if you watch some of our other videos and learn about our program through the website, one of our big differentiators really is that we bring diversity of thought, and that we don't have one or two dominant industries, and you really get to learn from a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. There is also, if you're calling in or listening in and you're a UCLA staff member, we do have a $15,000 fellowship allocated for you as well. There are some fellowship and funding opportunities for continuing students. So once you become a student, however, I will say that these also are usually in kind of a smaller amount. There is one award that is given. These are all application-based once you become a student. Our John Wooden Leadership Award. That's the most significant award that you can receive as a continuing student. One EMBA student is chosen per year. It is a $35,000 award. So that is an option. Then our centers listed here, some of our centers have had donors over the years donate some fellowship awards, but typically these are in the amount of $2,000 to $5,000. And again, they are application based. Again, every little bit counts, so I do like to bring those up. And then we do have case competitions. We have something called the Cross Campus Innovation Award. There are things you can participate in as a student where you could get some funding, especially let's say you're in entrepreneurship and you're starting your own company. We've got different case competitions there where you can actually win money to help fund your company. So I do like to mention these, even though they are minimal. There are external fellowships that you can look into. And I bring this up, there is the website here that I've provided where you can look up a database of some of these fellowships that would be available for graduate management education. There is also some of these third party like FastWeb and FinAid, where they're again databases where you can look up and see what you might be eligible for. But I do want to set your expectations that it is challenging, I think, to find awards that are significant in value. And so you may be spinning your wheels. I have heard of very few EMBA students, unfortunately, who have been successful in this area, but I did want to provide it as a resource to you. Finally, to wrap out this section, there are some tax benefits that you can consider, tax deductions that you can consider that may apply to you. Now, one big thing, or I should say that the website right here that I'm linking to, we have a video on our website that's our Dean Gonzalo Freixas, who's a professor of accounting. He's also the dean of the FEMBA and EMBA program. He goes through a whole 20-minute exercise on what tax benefits actually you could take advantage of. I will say that the Tax Cut and Job Acts of 2017 changed a lot of what you can deduct. So for example, if you're a W-2 employee, you're not going to be able to deduct on your federal tax returns. However, if you are a 1099, you or your spouse, if you file jointly, if you are a 1099, there is an opportunity for you to take some tax deductions. Even if you're a W-2 and a 1099, there are some opportunities. Also, if your company is sponsoring you and paying you that through your income, there is also opportunities to deduct that. Also, if you fall below a certain income level, then there are some educational tax credits. And for those of you that may be living in California, which is probably quite a few of you, New York, Alabama, or Hawaii, those states for your state tax returns did not adopt the elimination of the W-2 deduction. So definitely talk to your CPA if any of these things apply to you to understand what your options are from a tax benefit and savings standpoint. Okay, I am now going to turn it over to my colleague, Choi. She is the director of our financial aid office, along with Connie Kwan. They're actually also just hired a third person so that they can really give you one-on-one support. But G's going to start today by talking about a high level about what your loan options are and what you should consider. Handing it over to you, G.
Thanks, Shannon. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's first talk about the loan options for US citizens and permanent residents. So you can borrow from the federal government or the private lender, or you can borrow from both. So if you want to borrow from the government, you can borrow the unsubsidized loan or a graduate plus loan. You can borrow $20,500 per year from the unsubsidized loan. If you need to borrow more than that, you can borrow a graduate plus loan up to the budget, which also includes living expenses, should you need to borrow more than tuition and fees every year. For the unsubsidized loan, the government doesn't even check your credit history. So if you apply, you automatically be awarded $20,500. For the graduate plus loan, they do check your credit, but if there's nothing negative on your credit history, almost everyone gets approved for the graduate plus loan. So if you're willing to finance your education, you don't have to be worried about being able to borrow to finance your education. The rates you see here are this year's rates. Rates change every July. I don't think the rates will go up this year because of what's been happening with our economy due to the pandemic. But the rates will change, and we'll update our website probably in June to reflect next academic year's interest rates. The government also charges origination fees. So the fee is about 1% for the unsubsidized loan, but it's kind of high for the graduate plus loan. So if you borrow $10,000, they would deduct $423 before the money is sent to UCLA. And because of that, the true APR, the finance cost of the graduate plus loan, can be high. So let's say you're going to refinance your loans after you borrow when you're in school from the government, and then refinance 2 years later after you graduate. The APR could be as high as 9.5 because of the fee. So I definitely want you to consider your options. A lot of people, about 78% of the people this year are borrowing from the government. And that's because the process is really simple. You just complete the FAFSA, we send you an award notification, hopefully starting in May, when our fees are approved for next year. And then you accept the loan, you complete the master promissory note, the online entrance counseling, and then the money comes to school every quarter. About 7 to 10 days before each quarter begins, the money is sent to school towards your tuition and fees automatically. And anything that is remaining that you borrow, like more than tuition and fees, that'll be refunded to your account. So the process is really simple. And the government loans also offer like flexible repayment options. What if I start my business after I graduate and my take-home pay is not high? Then you only have to pay 10% of your discretionary income. Or if I go into a nonprofit sector or public sector once I graduate, you could pay a low payment based on your income. And then after 10 years, your loan can be forgiven. So government does offer like flexible repayment options and loan forgiveness options. But what if, I'm going to stay in private sector, my pay is going to be high, even higher than now, and I'm not worried about paying back my loans, then private loan might be an option that you want to consider. Most of them don't charge any origination fee, and depending on your income to debt ratio and credit history, your rates could be actually better than the government loan with a private lender. So some people borrow the unsubsidized loan and the rest in private loan. Some people just borrow private loans. Some people borrow just government loans. It's totally up to you. And you can change that in your second year. Just because you choose to do something in your first year doesn't mean that you're stuck with it in your second year. The downside of private loans is like right now, because of COVID, government is not charging interest on any student loans. Private lenders are charging interest, and government stopped collecting loan repayments from all borrowers, and private lenders are not doing that. So you're going to miss out on those benefits if you borrow from a private lender. Repayment on these loans starts after 6 months you graduate, so you don't have to make any payments when you're in school. And repayments usually like 10 years to 20 years. So and then you can pay back earlier too. There's no prepayment penalty. Interest starts to accrue when the money is dispersed to school each quarter, but it's not compounded like a credit card in interest. It's only capitalized once at repayment, which starts 6 months after you graduate. About 40 to 50% of MBA students borrow every year. Next slide, please. So if you're not a US citizen, you can still borrow private student loans. Unfortunately, you cannot borrow from the federal government. Like if you have an H-1 visa, unfortunately, the private loans are your only option. You can borrow with a US cosigner or without a US cosigner. If you have a cosigner, you will have more options and you can rate shop. On Admis Central, you can find the lender list that's put together by UC Office of the President, and you can go to that link and then search for a lender that will give you a competitive rate. And you can also borrow up to tuition and fees and living expense, total budget. Now, if you don't have a US cosigner, you can still borrow. You can borrow from Quorum or Discover because UCLA Anderson has a relationship with these lenders. And you can borrow only up to tuition and fees though with these lenders, but you're guaranteed to get these loans as long as there's nothing negative on your credit history. Because we act as your guarantor, you are able to borrow without a US cosigner. Next slide, please. So for domestic students, whether you borrow from a private lender or a federal lender, once you graduate, a lot of Anderson students refinance their loans. Just like a lot of people are refinancing their mortgage right now, you can do that with student loans. The good thing is for student loans, there's no fee. So you can refinance more than once to get a better rate. And these lenders are really after our students' business, right? Because our students have really good credit history, really good income to debt ratio. And like First Republic, for instance, their refinance rate starts at 2.25% fixed with 0% fee. So we talk to every student who wants to talk to us before they graduate about repayment strategy or refinancing strategy. But the reason I'm mentioning it here in advance is because if you are going to get the Graduate Plus loan and keep it for only 2 years, that APR is really high. That's why I kind of wanted to share this information with you. And so also that you know that you can get really low rates once you graduate. Unfortunately, First Republic won't work with students when they're in school, but they will refinance once you graduate. The average loan debt for the class that graduated in 2020 was $160,000. And some people borrow more, some people borrow less, but the average amount was $160,000. Next slide, please. So I want to share a few tips with you. In case you might want to borrow from a private lender or refinance once you graduate or get a Graduate Plus loan, check your credit history with all 3 credit bureaus. I use Credit Karma and annualcreditreport.com. So for me personally, what happened was one of the Verizon, I'm just gonna say the name of the company that did this to me, they put something on my credit history by accident. So when I checked Credit Karma on TransUnion, there was a mistake on my credit report. But because I review my credit history often, I was able to resolve it before I needed to get an auto loan or something, right? So check your credit history, not just with one credit bureau, but all 3 credit bureaus. That's very important. use your savings first and then borrow later. So unless you're like investing your money in property or stocks or something, if it's just sitting in your savings account, it's not earning much right now. And because the government and the private lenders charge interest when the money is dispersed to school, why, be charged interest if you're not earning a lot from your savings, right? So think of student loans as like the credit line that you can draw down the money anytime. So don't borrow in fall quarter, maybe borrow in spring quarter. So borrow as late as possible. Let's say you are going to get a bonus in 2 months, but your payment is due right now for the school. Then consider maybe borrowing from the government. If you pay back within 120 days from the disbursement date, all of the fee and interest will be canceled on your government loans. So it's like free financing for 4 months. So some EMBA and FEMBA students can utilize this because sometimes employers like give back money to you for your education expenses only after the grades are submitted, for instance, or you're waiting for that bonus. Then in those cases, this can be very helpful. And yeah, as Shannon mentioned, please feel free to reach out to me or Connie to set up one-on-one appointments. I see that some of the people who are on this workshop session are also already have a appointment with me, and that's great because everyone's situation is different, and we're really happy to talk to anyone about your specific cases and questions anytime.
Thank you so much, G. I think you can all hear there was in the chat, there was a lot of thank you. This is so helpful. I'm learning so much. So thank you for that. We do have a few minutes for some quick questions here. There's probably enough already in the chat that I'll ask those. And then please, everyone else who has questions about this topic, definitely here, write down G's contact information. G and Connie reach out, they'll set up a one-on-one. One thing I do ask you though is that you go to the website first and actually look at our financial aid page, read that so that you can really use G's time and your time well to ask about the questions that are most relevant. A few quick questions, G. Elizabeth asked, are interest rates lower in a case of having a cosigner, or it doesn't impact the interest rate?
That's a really good question. So this is what I would do. I would, if I'm going to rate shop for a private loan, I wouldn't do it earlier than June because some of the credit approvals could expire. But when you do, apply on your own with a few lenders that you choose. And you can find the lender list on our Admin Central website. There's one that we put together, and there's another one that's put together by the UC Office of the President. So go to the Admin Central and then look at the websites for the lender list. And then once you get your rates, bring in a cosigner and then see if it makes a difference. So it depends on the cosigner and their income to debt ratio and credit history. Usually, if their credit history is good, it'll lower the rate maybe by 0.25% or maybe even better. It depends on the lender, and they won't share their underwriting criteria with us. So definitely rate shop first on your own and bring in a cosigner and see how much of a difference that makes, and then make a final decision at the time. When you apply for private lenders, they will check your credit history, and that will bring down your credit score. So just make sure to do it in June, starting in June. Do it around the same time. I would just do that one day, so it'll only impact my credit score once, because you're shopping for the same product. And also, I'm not supposed to share this on the website, but I can say it. You can go to credible.com. They have the underwriting criteria of various private lenders, and they won't ask you to put in your social security number. I don't think so. So check it out. If they don't ask for social security number, you can go there and see what kind of rates you can possibly get from these lenders. And you can also check out SOFI, SOFI. I don't think they ask for your social security number either. So it's a soft check, so you can kind of see what kind of rates that you're eligible to receive from these lenders.
Okay, great. And for those of you who are not admitted yet and are in the prospect phase, when G mentions Admit Central, that's something you get access to once you get into the program. So I don't think you would need these details until you're actually going forward. But there's a lot of information on our regular website as well. There's one other quick question I think might be relevant to a lot. Ashwin, if you can email G directly, I think that'd be great. But Sebek asked, G, given the low interest rates right now, do you still recommend using savings first and borrow later?
So the rate is 0 right now, actually, because of COVID. And the rate is 0 until September 30th. we don't know if that will be extended or not. But if not, the interest rate is 4.3, and I know that I'm getting, I think, 0.4% on my savings. So that is much lower than the 4.3% interest rate on the unsubsidized loan. So in my calculation, I would just use my savings unless I have, I need to use my savings for other purposes. But you can borrow these government loans or student loans anytime during the academic year. So if I were a student, I would just use my savings and then start the loan application 2 to 3 weeks. I need the loan to come to school, and then I can just replenish my savings or personal checking account. That would be my strategy.
Thank you so much, G. And there are so many great questions in the chat, but I really just encourage all of you. We had a lot of information to cover today. G's not going to be able to get to all of these in chat. So just shoot her off an email, write it down one last time, and please know that her and Connie are here to help you. But we are going to have to move on. Thank you so much, G. So next, we're going to talk about career services and company sponsorship. I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Tom Larsen, and his team, Director of Executive MBA and Leadership Development at Anderson, to talk through these options, which are also ways that you can really think about recouping some of the money and also getting support from your company for the financing of the degree. So off to you, Tom.
Thanks so much, Shannon. It was great to see the recap of borrowing money. I remember when I was in your shoes. And I can happily report that it was some thoughtfulness on my part and some luck with the market. I actually paid for my MBA by paying attention to a couple of investment classes I was taking. But let's talk more broadly here. First of all, I want to congratulate you on your interest or your acceptance into the program. Our team works with about 70% of the students that come through the program through workshops, leadership at Anderson, or one-on-one coaching. Our goal is always to help you monetize your MBA. I want to share with you my two colleagues. You're going to hear from them very shortly. Jada Black, who is the Associate Director and a certified coach, and our operations manager, Sydney Wharton, who is just about to start her coaching certification this summer. And so by the time many of you show up, she'll be very close to completing that. We're dedicated to helping you regardless of whether you're in transition, switching jobs, or trying to advance in your organization. I can have the next slide. So a lot of you, always want to share some results. You've heard about the loans, you're thinking about financing. I think it's also understanding that the results of what you get in your MBA can help you pay for your education. I'm going to share some results that we've taken from a couple of years of students. Approximately 100 students gave us results that were able to compare their salaries when they applied, their titles and their companies, and compare that to when the day they graduated. And those are the results I want to share here. So on average, students saw their total compensation increase by 30% while they were in the program. Now, there's a wide variety in this. One student was making 50% less. In that case, that student realized that he wasn't doing what he loved, and it was worth his investment to switch careers to something that he was passionate enough about, and recognizing that there was potentially a pay cut involved. At the other end of the scale, we had a student who was making about $150,000 when he joined the program. And through attending some workshops, talking to us, by the time he was left, he was still with the same company. He was making about $400,000 a year. So there's really real impact that your MBA can bring to your overall compensation, as well as hopefully finding what you're truly passionate about. A year. That $50,000 a year means that your payback for an MBA is approximately 3.5 years. I don't know many people out there that wouldn't take that as an investment. And then lastly, I know many of you think about what's this mean for your career transitions. We found in our survey of those two classes that 80% of our students either changed positions within their company or switched companies altogether. So while all of this is happening, they're actually getting to the type of career they really want to pursue. Lastly, I want to say one thing about these numbers is I think they understate the impact. While there are no promises in any of this, I think they understate the impact. I got a great note from a student a couple of months ago. He had graduated just over a year ago. And he said, in one negotiation, using all the things that I learned from Anderson and working with your team, in that one negotiation as I transferred jobs, I actually paid for my entire MBA. So there is real impact in thinking through how you can finance this from just the cash flow that represents the value you get from Anderson. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sydney, and she's going to talk about some of the services that we offer.
Hello, everyone. So all of our offerings could fall under two categories. And as you could imagine, those categories are career and leadership. So under career, we have tools and assessments. For tools, we have an EMBA Career and Leadership Development Portal, and tons of resources live here. Resources for like a resume, resources for resumes. We also have resources for LinkedIn, such as a checklist given to us by a past workshop presenter. And we also have assessments that are mandatory for all MBA students, and then optional assessments from our office. Our career workshops, you'll be offered about 2 to 3 workshops per quarter on topics such as negotiations, executive presence, and personal branding. These workshops are presented by our team, of course, as well as external presenters. And our office also offers quite a few opportunities for you to network with your classmates, all current EMBA students, and EMBA alumni. There are more networking opportunities offered by the college. Those are just a few that we put on for you. Under leadership, Tom Larsen, our director, as well as with the help of the rest of the office, he manages leadership foundations. So that initial week is your orientation week, followed by a continuous leadership curriculum that you have about once a quarter. Jada Black manages our leadership at Anderson offering, which is our executive coaching offering. It also comes with an optional Korte 360 leadership assessment, followed by 10 hours of coaching with an external or internal coach. And the last bullet point here under leadership is the one-on-one coaching. This is the coaching that you're going to have with either Tom, Jada, or myself. This includes one-off conversations. I have an interview coming up I'd like to prepare for. I got the job. Could you give me some guidance with negotiations? One student in particular that comes to mind, or one alumni that comes to mind, met with Tom about once a month. They spoke about her career trajectory. They talked about how she could improve her leadership skills. Post-graduation, we learned that her income increased about $100K a year. The one-on-one coaching, because we are dedicated to the EMBA students only, is probably the best value that you get out of our office.
Thank you, Sydney. Jada, can you take through how people, so we've talked about how you can make money out of working with us and how that can improve your compensation. Jada's going to take you through some thinking about how you can make a case for sponsorship by your employer, and then I'll give you an idea of how you might message that.
Excellent, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes, thumbs up. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with you, and I love the journey that you're on in considering Anderson. It's a fabulous school. So this is a great time, to really begin the work it takes to try to gain sponsorship from your employer. And although some students will gain sponsorship post-acceptance post-acceptance, that tends to be on the rare side. Typically, if you're considering a postgraduate program, you're going to want to start planting the seeds around development and performance mile markers, things such as your one-on-ones with your manager, performance reviews, etc. By your attendance today, we're hoping that we can impart to you some information that will help to give you what you need to begin putting that plan together and having those discussions. So the first point is know the value to the company and the policy. In a former life, before I got into executive coaching, I was an HR director. So I know all too well the policies that are put in place in different organizations. And one thing that you can start with is to gain insight from other colleagues within your organization that have achieved the MBA and have excelled or been valued in the company. You want to start a conversation with those individuals who have obtained it while they've been at the company. And a lot of leaders, they don't necessarily come into an organization with their MBA, but it does become a part of their career growth. So it's something they obtain along the way. So by talking to them, you can see how the company may have sponsored their programs or what projects or value-add assignments they've been able to provide. You want to make a list of these individuals that you already know in the organization that have obtained their MBA degree and start having these conversations. Now, keep in mind, some of the information that they might impart to you might not be on policy. It might be, special exceptions that have been granted. It's just notes that you want to make for yourself. It's not something that you're going to publicly broadcast in case there are exceptions afforded to you, but it does help you with the negotiation phase in terms of how they've been able to use it and create that value add in the organization. So you want to look at what is the current policy around educational benefits or tuition reimbursement, and is there such a policy? And if so, how much is typically granted when you compare what's on offer for what period of time against what the full cost of the UCLA MBA degree would cost? What is that difference and how do you shore that up? So as you're being armed with this information, it will help you towards crafting your proposal. And it's really crucial to think of not only what's in it for you in terms of getting your executive MBA, but more importantly, what's in it for the company, particularly if we're looking for sponsorship. So number 2, identify your skill gaps. The things that you want to consider is where do you want to take your career? If we were to forecast this out in the next 2 to 5 or 10 years, where do you see yourself? Perhaps it's in a leadership position. And if you're already in senior leadership, perhaps it's an expansion into new territories. The key here is to examine where you're currently at in your career and where you're at, where you would like to take it and where that delta lies. In that delta is your skill gaps. And what do you want to do to shore them up? And how can the executive MBA help you achieve that? All the while you're examining your skill gaps, you want to keep a list of the various initiatives and what other things top of mind for leadership. Then you want to go forward and create your story. Item 3. So after examining where you want to take your career, the corresponding skill gaps, you want to define how that executive MBA will help you to close that skill gap while simultaneously creating value for the company. And you can think of this as like you would in an interview. You're talking to an employer about a potential opportunity and you want to articulate your value proposition. You want to be able to leverage the skills that you currently have and the value that will be added with the MBA. What would that afford you to be able to do and create greater value for the organization? And then finally, you want to start with your immediate manager. After you've spent time talking with others and that have obtained an MBA in the organization, and you've examined where you'd like to take your career along with the skill gaps and crafted your story around the benefits of the MBA and how it will accelerate your skill sets to meet future needs and challenges of the organization. Once you've done that, and you're looking at, consider things like the industry. What industry is your organization in? What challenges, kind of like a SWOT analysis, what challenges might be on the horizon for them? And how will the MBA help you to meet up with those? So once you have that defined, now you're ready to have this conversation with your manager, your immediate manager. This individual in most organizations is going to carry a great deal of weight when it comes to, the company deciding if it's worth the investment to them for them to sponsor your executive MBA. Convincing them of all the value add and the benefits will be your first litmus test when you're having this conversation with your manager. Be prepared, however, to also have upper level conversations. Your manager is going to be that first person, but it's going to be, hey, maybe talk to their manager or other senior leaders within the organization so that you're ready to really convey that value for them. After examining where you want to take your career and the corresponding skill gaps, you're going to present this to them. And be also prepared to negotiate on some different things. If it's not necessarily a full sponsorship that they're able to offer, perhaps there's some other things that they might consider: days off, increase in pay, perhaps bonus pay, and things like that. And a lot of the ways that we can creatively come up with affording the MBA would be very helpful. So these are some things that hopefully will get you started on the path of getting sponsorship within your organization. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Tom to give you even more greater insights.
Thanks, Jada. So one of the things that you have to think about now is, how are you going to communicate? Is this going to be a written or verbal offer? And if it's going to be written, is it going to be PowerPoint or prose? Again, I want to emphasize what Jada said. Start with the company. The company will treat this as an investment, and they want to see an ROI on this. So I always say, how is this MBA going to help your company save time or money? Or how is it going to help you increase quality or revenue? If you can say, if I can take these skills from Anderson and apply them to my company, as we always recommend, here's the kind of return you're going to get back. To paraphrase Peter Drucker, if you can't measure it, it's not going to get rewarded. Okay, break this into two parts. First, focus on the company and the issues they're facing. We had one student that shared with us that they cut down significantly on consulting costs because instead of the company hiring consultants, they had this student do the work. Another potential way you can add value to a company is through your final capstone project, your SMR project, where actually you and a team of your classmates come in and analyze a real challenge that the company's facing. An incredible value to most companies for the $15,000 they have to spend. Second of all, I want you to think about why it's right for them to invest in you. If you give them a good path of how you're going to solve those problems, this usually becomes a bit of an academic exercise, because they're not going to say, oh, there's somebody on the third floor who can do this. You've made the case for yourself. So tie back the values that the company needs with the values you bring to it. Thirdly, I'd suggest always get your benchmarks in place. Benchmarks vary all over the place. Many companies have a policy, and this is why we suggest you don't start with HR first, of some nominal fee. I've seen it from $2,000 up to $10,000 that they will use to sponsor an MBA. We found that companies that don't have these policies can also be, don't worry about that. It can also be a great opportunity to open a negotiation on sponsorship. Even if they do have formal sponsorship, it's important to be ready to negotiate. There's data that we know as we teach negotiations on salary negotiations for new jobs or existing jobs, we know that only about 40% of all people negotiate. The numbers for reimbursement are even less. So I want you to think about that as you go into negotiation. I also want to share with you a benchmark. Not every company out there, but there are companies, I know that there have been people that have been successful in negotiating anywhere between 50 and 100% of their MBA with their company. I want you to keep one thing in mind as you go for additional sponsorship money. There is usually a deal with your organization. They're not going to pay for you to take this MBA and then go off and work for a competitor. So they usually have some sort of clawback structure in place where they say 2 or 3 years, if you leave before that time, pro rata, you've got to pay us back. These agreements vary, and we're happy to talk to you about them. Lastly, as Jada alluded to, let's say you hit roadblocks on all of these things. Let's talk about other things you can talk about. One of the things that's always important, if you are truly bringing your MBA, we always say learn on the weekend, bring it back in on Monday. If you're showing to your employer that you can bring what you're learning back in and help them solve problems, you can get compensated for it. I recently heard from a student that's currently in the program. He got an additional 10% salary increase because he was demonstrating the value he was getting out of his MBA, right? Now, that he didn't get a lot more sponsorship money, but that represented about 20% of his of a year's worth of your tuition. Another thing to always go for, and this is where employers are very flexible, is ask for the Fridays when you're in class off. I have not had a student ask for that yet that hasn't at least gotten a handshake agreement with his employer and his direct manager that can happen. Also, this is a little less relevant now, but students often ask for the Thursdays before classes started to be a work from home day. I know things have changed with COVID, but that's always something that's very negotiable and will help you get through this program. The last thing I want to do is share with you an example from a student from last year. He called us facing the exact challenges that you were facing. He had been with this company for 15 years. He had never negotiated his salary, and now his division was being sold to his competitor, and he wanted to think about what he could negotiate around tuition and other things, right? So we talked about it, and we did step number one. We talked about his value to the company, and what we discovered with George is George had developed the technology that the competitor was actually buying. And when we did a back of the envelope, and it should have been a very big envelope, we determined that George's technology was going to save the new company tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. So we understood why it was important. And we also understood that George was the person that had this. So we took care of number two. He could deliver this value. George went off. He spent 2 hours with us. He went back. He got full tuition reimbursement, as well as restricted stock units, as well as a substantial raise. So I really encourage you to do your homework and think about how you can add value to your company and how they might in turn give you some sponsorship and some support as you're pursuing your Anderson MBA. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Tom, Jada, and Sydney. I think this gives you a real sense of this team, how approachable they are, how supportive they are. If you win, then we all win as well. So thank you so much for that. And I hope all of you have a little bit, maybe now, again, a little more encouragement to go ask some of these questions if it's appropriate to your company. So now I want to turn it over to a student and alumna panel. We have Abhinav Chandra here with us today from the class of 2021. So he will be graduating in just a few months. And then we're pleased to have Eileen Korte with us as well, a 2019 graduate from the EMBA program. Thank you so much for both of you for joining today. I think it's really, I think Ellen is currently getting them set up here on the spotlight, but I think it is very important for not only for you to hear from us, but for you to hear to people who were in your same shoes not too long ago. So I'm going to start. Abhinav, good to see you. Eileen, great to see you. Thank you so much. So Abhinav, I'm going to start with you because I know that for you, it's really relevant what was kind of just talked about around the company sponsorship. If you could start by first just letting us know, what were your reasons in wanting to pursue an MBA, your personal reasons, and what were the main goals in doing so?
Thank you, Shannon, for the opportunity. So just a background, I'm a medical oncologist. I want to build a career as a healthcare executive. And so as to advance my career, I chose to do an MBA. I feel like we need more physician leaders in the healthcare system. And that's the background that I feel that getting an MBA would definitely be helpful in furthering that cause. I did look around for different MBA programs. I also toyed with the idea whether whether a healthcare related MBA would be a much more appropriate as opposed to a general MBA like UCLA has to offer. But I feel that medical facilities or hospitals are very honed down into their own practices. I think it would be a great opportunity to learn from peers from other industries, also get their insights and their experience. So that's the reason that I chose to pursue an MBA. And again, UCLA was my first choice.
Great. Thank you so much. And we'll come right back to you. I just want Eileen to be able to share so you get kind of different people come for different reasons. And so Eileen, for you, what were your main reasons in pursuing an MBA? And again, your goals that you had in doing so? Oh, I think you're on mute. All good.
Sorry. I remember that it was one day in the summer, I just woke up and I was like, I know what I need to do. I need to get an MBA. And really what spurred that was I had received a promotion to where I was a vice president in our sales division. And I thought to myself, this is a great promotion, but if I want to really excel in this role or go somewhere else and do the same, I need more of a management background. I need to grow my skills. And at that point, I started looking at programs. I was accepted to USC and UC Irvine, but I really chose Anderson because of the ranking. And UCLA is a great institution, what can I say? So I was really looking to better navigate a business environment. My undergraduate major was film and also fiction writing. So I wanted to build my quantitative skills, my quantitative confidence, and my people skills.
Great. Thank you both. That's really, again, helpful, I think, for people to hear very different backgrounds, but kind of some of the overlap in what your goals were in coming. So I'm going to actually, so we can see your face, beautiful face is bigger. I'm going to take the screen off. So Abhinav, for you, I know you were able to secure some company sponsorship above what your standard educational benefit was. I think it was around $5,000 per year for your company. So I'm curious to know, how did you go about this? And what do you think those key factors were that made you successful in being able to get an increased amount?
Yeah, that's great. I think quite a few of it has already been covered by Jada, Tom, and Sydney. But again, that's something that once I came to this new role, within a few years, I was thinking as to what my growth advancement within the hospital system would be. And I did meet with the CM, the chief medical officer, who would be my immediate superior and who I report to, as well as the CEO of the hospital, and said, hey, I want to be a healthcare executive. I want to excel in this role. What my next step should be, basically seeking out mentorship from them. And both of them suggested that getting an MBA would be useful and helpful. So when the time came, our contracts are negotiated every 3 years. I tried to get the MBA also option in there, in the sense I wanted to make sure that they supported my MBA. So I initially started with full sponsorship, but then there was a little back and forth. They did not agree to that. Then finally, they came to a number which was much more than what was the standard for the hospital. And again, going back to what Jada had already mentioned, I did not approach HR because you will get a standardized answer through which all the employees, but you meet with the people who you know have seen your work and where you have made an impact, and they will be the people who will be furthering your cause. So that was an important thing. I think that's where I was able to get a more impact. The other thing was, again, as Tom mentioned just now, was to negotiate for time off as well. And to be frank, I had much more opposition or trouble getting that approved as opposed to the financial part. But I made sure that it was inbuilt in my contract that I would be able to take Fridays at least 15 days every academic year for all the various activities that an MBA would be successfully able to. Otherwise, they would be saying that you take it from your days of or PLT, but I said that would not be a very good work-life balance. So I was happy that they were able to justify and help me with that.
Yeah. Thank you, Abhinav. And I think that's something that I hear from so many of our students that are able to get sponsored, that you got to go big with that ask, because it sounds like you landed somewhere in between. And so, don't be afraid to go and ask for maybe 100% and then land somewhere, in between, better than starting at 50 and landing there. So 101 in negotiation. Thank you for sharing. Now, Eileen, for you, a little bit of a different journey, but I'm curious to know that how I know that at the end of your time in the program, you were able to actually get another promotion. And so I'm curious, how did you involve your company along the way in your journey to make that happen? And maybe even some of the career services Tom mentioned, just if you could share your story of how you worked towards that.
Yes, I think when I decided I wanted to go back to school, I shared it with my employer. They were very supportive. At the time, we were a family-owned company. The owner had an MBA, the CEO at the time had an MBA. People respected that I wanted to learn and grow, and I brought them along for the journey. As I learned things in class, I'd share them with my manager, I'd share some readings with HR. And that way they were watching me go on this journey. They were part of it as well. But there were interesting ways that it kind of led to my later promotion. So for example, we have offices around the world. When we were doing our international trip in EMBA, I wanted to go to China and Hong Kong. And we had just opened an office in Hong Kong. They had come to our LA office for some training, and I'd worked with them, and I said to the CEO at the time, well, I'm going to be going to Hong Kong with UCLA. I'd love to stop by the office. Would you guys pay my airfare? So they did that for me. While I was in the Hong Kong office, one of our board members was there as well and kind of watched me work with people in the office. He later became our CEO. And the year I graduated, I received a promotion to where I was head of marketing with more of a global international role. And that was directly the result of going on that Hong Kong trip, having the board member there, him seeing what I could do. And that was really exciting. So comparing my salary from the year I started the program to last year, my salary has increased 65%.
Wow, congrats.
So that's definitely the result of going back to school. There's no other way I would have gotten there.
Thank you for sharing that. Congrats. That's an incredible story. And again, every little bit helps. Asking for the flight to be covered, again, saves you a couple $1,000s there. So thank you for sharing that. I am going to open it up to Q&A in just a minute. But one thing I want to ask each of you before we move to that, I just want to know that you both have talked about the financial upside, and we definitely, that is what this event was focused on. But if you could think of something beyond just the financial upside, what would you say has been one of your greatest value or learnings that you're taking away from your MBA? Abhinav, if you want to share, I know you're coming to the end, you've got a few months left. So what would you say is that one of the biggest things you're taking away from it?
I think the ability to interact with a diverse cohort of peers and faculty and have those lively discussions in class. And also we are, as my BCO, we are working with a blood-based diagnostic company. So being able to work across the campus at UCLA with the engineering school, with UCLA Health, and be able to take that technology further also has been of great help.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. What about you, Eileen?
Definitely my classmates. I really thrived being in an environment where you're challenged by everybody around you. You're learning from them. There's diverse backgrounds. You're dealing with engineers. You're dealing with lawyers, doctors. There were a few people in entertainment, but there were people in every industry. And that's the best value of the program, is that it's not even networking, you're building these lifelong friendships, you go through the fire together, you laugh and cry and drink together. It's a really great environment it's harder to have that once you're an adult and you're working, right? To have that kind of college experience again as an adult where you're more emotionally mature, hopefully. So definitely the best part of the program.
Thank you. So I said that at the beginning, and I don't know if you guys were listening, but that is consistent with what we hear. So thank you for sharing that. So I know we're at 1 o'clock. We are going to stay on for another 15 minutes for Q&A. For those of you that might have to drop, we're going to have a recording of this session that will be sent to all registrants. So I will say, if you have to leave, completely understand, but Abhinav and Eileen and the rest of the team are going to stay on. And again, I encourage any of you to reach out to us, look at more of the webinars on our website. That we've had about 12 webinars so far this season, so focusing on different areas of the program. So for those of you that have to drop, really look forward to seeing you in the future. But I know Adriana has had her hand up for about 10 minutes. So I'm going to, Adriana, if you want to unmute and ask your question, that would be great.
Yes, hi. Clearing, I actually need to jump off for a call, but I wanted to ask my question. Thank you so much for the presentation today. It's been super helpful. My question is actually for Tom and Joy and the team of Career Services in regards to negotiations of contracts. Or of tuition. I've actually been able to negotiate that with my current company. However, we're in the middle of the negotiation process because it's not a program that currently exists with my employer. So they have asked me to try and find like a gold standard out there in the world of what companies offer, since it's a new program for us. And so they've kind of asked me to spearhead the way of creating a program that also offers the opportunity for application and equity across our organization. So I wanted to ask if you have any recommendations on companies to reference.
I will share with you actually, a gold standard that I've heard recently.
Okay.
I'm not going to share with our students because a lot of times our students want to keep it quiet for a lot of reasons.
Okay.
But we're having Brad Tilden, the former CEO of Alaska Airways, come and speak to the students, or virtually speak to the students, in a couple of weeks. And Brad's an EMBA graduate from a different program up in the Northwest. He's from WashU. Our University of Washington. And he said that the gold standard they had is they sponsor fully two executive MBAs every year. And that's the best standard I've heard, where they actually have a written policy for sponsoring executive MBAs.
Amazing.
The other company I'll share is Amgen is another company that does have a program that actually focuses on sponsoring executive MBAs as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your support. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So if anyone wants to put in the chat, I'm trying to keep up with these. Okay, Anne looks like she has a question. Eileen, you mentioned earlier that you also applied with UCI and other programs. What's your recommendation for someone that is in the music movie industry and currently comparing USC and UCLA? Thank you.
I had a friend from undergrad who is a producer out here. She chose to go to USC. I chose to go to UCLA. I think we both had great experiences, but I think for me, it was the academic ranking of UCLA just spoke a lot to me. For my undergraduate, I went to Northwestern, so I kind of wanted a rigorous academic environment. I don't know, UCLA just always felt like the right fit for me. And I had other friends in other graduate programs at UCLA. So, I think UCLA was more expensive for my friend than USC was. But I know for me personally, I liked the diversity of the enrollees. When I visited USC, it didn't seem like they had as many functions represented. And that's why it's good to hear that with the fellowships that are now starting to come to the EMBA program, that diversity of functional areas is an important component of that. And also, I think the entrepreneurship program at Anderson is unparalleled. And it being a research university and all the other departments that you can interact with, I took classes that in the FEMBA program on weeknights that were entertainment classes specifically. And one of the professors used to work in television for a number of years. I loved his class. One of our assignments was pitching a TV show. We won our final assignment and we got to pitch that show at CAA. So there are really cool opportunities at UCLA for those in entertainment. And there were people from Disney and Sony in my cohort as well.
Thank you, Eileen. And actually, Abhinav, I know you weren't able to travel for a lot of the program because of being a 22-1, but you're from Arizona, so you're coming from out of state. I don't know, maybe anything that Anne might want to hear about other schools you might have looked at or why you chose UCLA.
Yeah, very similar to Eileen's recommendations. Means I looked at the rankings. I did go to USC. They have a campus in San Diego. I did go one day, sat through that. In all honesty, I did not feel there was that rigor as what UCLA. I did come to UCLA as well, sat on 1.5 day full of class. So, and I've not repented my decision coming to UCLA any bit. Yes, COVID did put a damper on things, but you make use of opportunities which comes your way. So yeah, although you're not able to come on campus, but then you have the ability to audit other classes, which you would not have been able to do that if you had to be there in person. So you make what you get, but definitely UCLA was my top.
Great. Does anyone else have any other questions that we can address today? Ramesh, if you want to go ahead and unmute.
Hey, thank you very much, Shannon and EMBA team. This is really helpful. This is something that I'm looking for when I'm actually evaluating my MBA. Thank you for the time. I have a question specifically to career services, Tom, and as well as alumni. My background is from tech industry, and as a software developer, when anybody says I'm going to do MBA, the first thing they ask is, are you going to do a startup? Or are you actually trying to move yourself from a hardcore developer to a program manager or product manager roles? So these are the two paths that they generally suggest. In my case, I'm trying to evaluate myself going back and forth about MBA. What is the thing that I can do being close to my technical background, but still progress into the C band? Right now, I'm a lead kind of a position, but I want to see myself in another 5 to 10 years into the C band. How do I actually plan or shape up my story? And what kind of tips, if anybody can suggest, that would be great.
So I hate to say it, that's a longer conversation, but it's one that we have very regularly with students that attend here. And I'm not trying to dodge this. There are so many ifs, ands, and buts about there. To give you specific advice right now would be a disservice to you. We see a lot of students make those kinds of transitions, and they make them successfully. The one thing I would say is go talk to people in your network who have made that transition and start talking to them about how they did it and what was important to them. Keeping in mind that your values and what's driving you and what interests you and motivates you are going to be different than everyone you talk to. But that's the first step, is see how others have walked that path.
Got it. Yeah. So to add on to that story, if I may, my immediate managers as well as skip managers, they had a career progression when they had a great idea, and that they developed into a product. So with their experiences, they actively asked me to pursue MBA if I have a similar thoughts, because they were missing the piece related to customer revenues, to the company forecasting, such kind of a chat. Writing a product code is easy, but trying to make sure that aligns to the company values and company growth is something that MBA brings, is what I'm gathering the information.
Absolutely. I mean, what it does is it just broadens your scope. And and it gives you such a better perspective on everything else that's happening in the company that, sometimes people who are in engineering functions just don't have a perspective. They kind of understand how to write code and they don't understand everything else that's going on there. And the one other thing I'll say in this, when you come to campus, we introduce this. Where you think you're going today is not where you will be going when you leave 2 years from now. There are too many in my time here. There are too many people that came in and said, I am going to be an entrepreneur and startup. And the next thing I know, they're going to an investment bank, or they wanted to do X and they're doing Y in some other direction. It's, you learn from your classmates, you learn from your classes, and you learn about yourself through coaching as to what's really important to you and what you want to pursue.
Thank you. And Anne, we'll get to you. I see your hand up, but I mean, Abhinav, like, for example, I don't know if did you know coming in that you were going to participate in the business creation option, which is the capstone thesis to start your own company?
No, I was planning to do an SMR, and I was trying to get my employer to do some project with me over here. I was trying to recruit a team right after the first semester itself. So yeah, things change. You don't know what you will land up. And then someone came with the idea there's a lung cancer screening blood-based technology that you might be. And it really worked well because I'm an oncologist. That's a great way. And so, yeah, you never know what's going to happen and what opportunities you will have interacting with your colleagues.
Yes, thanks, Abhinav, and thanks, Tom. Anne, I see your hands up.
Yes, this question for Tom. Thank you, Shannon, for the opportunity. For someone that is actually in the sales industry, that I'm in a sales position right now, so I actually make high income already. But going into EMBA, looking into a future management role, to me, for the longest time, it will be a pay cut. So what's your recommendation on that? Because it's very hard to compare a sales position and an executive management position.
No, I think it's a great question. And again, can't give you, if it was so easy, and it's not because I want to be out of a job or that I'm making it more difficult, but there are so many nuances to this. But Jada and I have been working with an individual who's currently in the program, who's exactly in this position. And his big breakthrough came when I just asked, how much is your happiness worth? Right? And he found it. He feels like he's in a toxic environment and he's just going nowhere with his life. And he wants to learn and he wants to advance and he wants to grow. And I said, what do you want to do? And he came out with 17 different ideas. And I go, what are you doing to explore those? And he goes, I think that's where we need to start working. So my point being is sometimes there is a financial cost to shifting. I mentioned that other individual before. I'm not saying it has to be, right? But I am saying is that's where you get through time working with us is we help you discover what that trade-off might be and whether that's an attractive trade-off to you.
Thank you so much, Tom and Anne, for the question.
Could I
yes,
jump in on
please,
that
Eileen?
One?
Yes.
So when I came in, I'd just been promoted to an executive position in sales, but some of my compensation was still best on hitting those sales numbers. So now on the other side of the MBA, it's in base compensation, which I prefer. And as a salesperson, I mean, waiting to see what your commission is isn't really what we want, right? We want it in our salary. So I was able to make that leap with the MBA, but you might have to take a step back to take a step forward. But if you don't want to be beholden to commission, it's worth taking that step.
Same man over here. For a doctor, the main revenue you generate is by seeing patients and generating what we call as RVUs. As you transition more to a role in administration, you tend to take a pay cut. But again, it's what you want to grow into. And again, where is your work-life balance? I know whether with the trajectory where you are on 10 or 15 years down the line, do you see yourself doing the same thing or you want to grow into something else? So that's the vision that you need at this time and make an investment on that vision at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Anne. Well, thank you. I know we're right at time. So again, Abhinav and Eileen, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I know you brought real examples to this. And again, many of the people here are sitting in shoes you were in. So thank you so much for your time. Tom, Jada, Sydney, G, so great having you. And I hope to all the prospects and applicants and admits, I hope you will engage with us. I hope you will reach out. And thank you so much for your time today.